I am 46 years old this year, with black hair, a height of 6 feet 3 inches, and a weight of about 190 pounds. Some might say I look good, but I am not the heartthrob on television. Sharon and I have been happily married for 22 years, and we have 2 daughters, Melanie and Stephanie. Melanie is already married, and Stephanie is about to graduate from college. Sharon is about 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighs no more than 135 pounds, and has long blonde hair. She is truly a sweet person inside and out. At present, she is working for our pastor, Reverend Bob Shelter, as a secretary, and she has been doing it for a year and a half. Let me tell you what happened last Friday. I had a generous lunch break and decided to surprise Sharon and take her out. Because it was raining, I parked at the side door of the church office, hoping to be closer to the door. However, when I arrived, I found that Sharon's office was empty. I still went in. While waiting, I overheard Sharon talking with Pastor Bob in his office. She was looking forward to Monday night and mentioned how great it was that I worked for the television station on Monday night's football game because it gave us an opportunity to be together. She also asked about the reservation in LA. Pastor Bob assured her that everything was arranged, and I booked a hot tub suite for us. Come over, I'll show you now. I heard the rustling of some clothes, followed by Sharon's moaning. I felt shocked, almost nauseous, and my anger was building up. I knew I needed to leave before I did something foolish. I couldn't bear to listen any longer. I had the urge to go in and confront them, but I hesitated because I knew I would lose control and might even become violent, considering my emotional state at the time. I would definitely kick both of them, but I didn't want to face the consequences of my actions. So I made the difficult decision to turn around and leave. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I wanted to vent, but I walked away. I was quite sure that neither of them noticed me or knew I had been there. They had security cameras monitoring the main entrance of the church, but I came and went through the side door without being detected. I was so shocked that I realized I couldn't concentrate for the rest of the day. I called my workplace and explained that I wasn't feeling well and needed to go home. I needed time to think about what had just happened, and staying at home seemed like the best place. Sharon didn't come home until after 4 p.m., giving me enough time to process everything. It was obvious that Sharon and Pastor Bob were having an affair, and I decided I couldn't consider him my pastor anymore. What I really needed to uncover was the full extent of their relationship. How long it had been going on and what led to all this. I know some people are unwilling to delve into these details because they think they are insignificant, but I am not one of those people. I was very curious about why this happened in my seemingly happy marriage, a marriage that was obviously not as wonderful as I thought in Sharon's eyes. She was not as sweet a person as I thought, and I was determined to uncover the truth. I am not a weak person, and I was determined to find out the truth of this matter and ensure that both of them faced the consequences of their actions. Once I got home, I brewed a pot of coffee and went outside to sit on the terrace, hoping that the pleasant weather and fresh air would help me think clearly. I needed to explain everything that had happened. I won't deny that I shed some tears that afternoon because I did understand that I didn't own Sharon or her body, but the thought of her having sex with another man or possibly more people deeply hurt me when she promised herself to me on our wedding day. Some people may not take these vows seriously, but I do, and I believe she did too. Such a situation makes you question your entire set of values and makes you wonder if you have foolishly believed in loyalty, love, and everything that comes with it all your life. No matter what others say, the most harmful part of a cheating partner is not just the physical act, but the loss of trust and everything they say or do. It's like in your entire marriage, you thought they supported you, but now you realize they don't, leaving you feeling exposed and afraid. Despite being 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 190 pounds, I felt vulnerable and scared. It highlights how a cheating spouse can affect a person's emotional well-being. I sat there, struggling with my emotions, trying to stay calm and logical so that I could deal with everything. I realized that there were things in the past that I had questioned, but let go because of my trust in Sharon. These little things didn't seem important at the time, but now when I connected them, they formed a heavy lump in my stomach. How could I have been so foolish? It's trust, pure and simple. I took her as the object of trust, and today, that trust has shattered. What I need is the cold, hard facts. I want to know why all this happened. I want to know the duration, frequency, location, and who else might have been involved. My trust has evaporated, and I am determined to find the answers I need. As an update, I feel that I am not yet ready to face Sharon without revealing my feelings, so at 3 p.m., I decided to leave home before she came back. I drove into town, stopped at the station to pick up some things I would need for the next few days. I slipped into my boss's office and asked for a few days off earlier in the week, explaining that I was dealing with some personal issues and didn't feel well. He agreed, so I left and went to Frankie's to hang out until I had to go home around 5 p.m. I called Sharon and let her know that I would stop by and not come home for dinner. She seemed annoyed with me and mentioned that she felt very cute tonight, and I would be treated. However, my plan was already set, so I told her to keep the atmosphere warm and assured her that I would take care of her when I got home. She replied sharply, "Don't count on it, sir. If you think you can treat me like this, you won't get anything for a while." Deep down, I thought this was exactly what I wanted to happen. I got home around 10:30 p.m., feeling quite drunk, but not so drunk that I didn't notice that the bedroom door was closed and locked. I sneered at this and knocked on the door to see if she was awake, although I suspected not. I said loudly, "Well, if this is the game you want to play, then don't expect any intimacy from me, deal with it yourself." With that, I headed to the spare bedroom. The next morning, as I got up, she was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. I could sense that her coffee had gone a bit cold as I walked in. Had I not known her to be an unfaithful wife, I surely would have felt that something was amiss. I gave her a friendly smile and said, "Honey, no need to get up and make breakfast, I'll grab something on my way to the golf course." Then, I left the kitchen, went to the garage, loaded my golf clubs into the trunk, and drove away. Shortly after, my phone rang, and I noticed it was her calling, so I chose not to answer. A few minutes later, I heard a beep, indicating she had left me a voicemail. I listened, and it was a message filled with anger, asking how I could treat her this way and demanding that I return immediately. In truth, I had no intention of actually going to play golf. I used that excuse to buy myself a few hours to handle what I needed to do. My destination was my former church. The last thing I wanted was to hear Bob's sermon again. When I arrived, it was still early, so I knew there was a good chance no one would be around. I was right. Since my wife worked there, I had a key. I went straight to the office with the intention of placing remote mini cameras and mini microphones in her office and Bob's office. I quickly set everything up and hid the transmitter behind some old boxes in the supply room across the hallway. I had a receiver in my trunk, which I connected to my car's electrical system. This way, I could monitor their conversations and activities whenever they were in the office. Although I didn't expect them to do much in the church, I was confident that by observing and listening to them for a few days, would gather valuable information. Once I made sure everything was working properly, I searched her desk but found nothing significant. However, I did notice a big star on her calendar marked for Monday, which was consistent with what I overheard on Friday. I was prepared for anything that might happen that day. Next, I entered Bob's office and searched it. I had no luck finding any incriminating evidence, but just as I thought I had run out of options, inspiration struck. Considering I was in a church, it was a bit ironic, but I suddenly thought to check the church's expense receipts in the filing cabinet. Goodness, I found a folder with several receipts from Roswell, LA Inn. Some were from the end of 2019, and a few were from the spring of 2020. Realizing I had stayed too long and my luck had run out, I hastily photocopied the receipts and left with them. Then, I tidied up and left. My next step was to go to the golf course and park in my usual spot. I went to the clubhouse and headed to the bar. I wanted to make sure some people there remembered my presence. I found a table in the back, ordered a Sprite, and stayed there for a few hours. During that time, I carefully reviewed the receipts and found that the two from the end of 2019 were both on Mondays, and the two from the spring of 2020 matched exactly with the dates of my meetings at CBS headquarters in New York. What angered me the most was that Bob had the audacity to put the cost of those motel rooms on the church's account, disguised as meeting room rentals for meetings with my wife, and I paid the bill without knowing, even though we had been donating to the church all along. I decided I would no longer donate to them. Their day of reckoning was approaching, and all I needed was more evidence to seal their fate. I was certain that this affair had been going on for nearly a year, if not longer, which was consistent with the clues I had discovered earlier. My intuition was that Bob had been involved with her even before she worked at the church. She had a good receptionist job at Telfer Company, but she eagerly accepted the opportunity to work for the church, saying, "Honey, it's so close to home, and I'll be working for the church. What could be better than that? Plus, the salary is almost as much as I was making. How could I refuse?" It sounded great, close to home, church work, and a salary almost the same. However, it was clear that she was more interested in the extra benefits. I couldn't believe how blind I had been. This made me angry, but the thought of my beloved wife betraying me like this also made me feel sick. I was determined to make them pay for their actions. I decided it was time to do some investigation. I went to my car and connected my iPod to the frequency of the receiver in my trunk. After browsing the data for a few minutes, I saw Bob enter his office and make a phone call. I regretted not having put a bug on his phone, but there was nothing I could do now. I could only be content with hearing one side of the call. "Yes, Sharon, I'm at the church now. I came as soon as you called me. Why didn't you tell me what's bothering you? I wonder if he has done this before." "I see. So, what do you think made him angry?" Then he asked, "Do you think he suspects anything?" Sharon laughed and said, "Well, you can get back at him on Monday night." After hanging up the phone, he sat there thinking. Just as I was about to turn off the transmission, he muttered something almost inaudible, but I managed to catch it. I made sure to save that audio clip, knowing it might be useful later. After turning it off, I drove home. I thought it might be a bit cold there, so I started mowing the lawn and dealing with some chores in the basement. When I walked in, she didn't say much to me, but the tension in the air was palpable. I chose to ignore her, and she sat there staring at me. Eventually, she tried to start a conversation by asking what had been bothering me lately and why I had been acting strangely. I reminded her that she had locked me out of the bedroom the night before, and I rarely went out with my friends. I pointed out that the one time I did go out, she got upset and made threats, so this situation was a result of her behavior, not mine. In frustration, she retorted with a curse. I noticed that her language did not match the behavior of a devout Christian woman, and considering her strong faith, her reaction clearly showed a sense of guilt on her face, and I didn't understand how she thought I wouldn't notice. Nevertheless, she managed to regain her composure and eventually left the table. I thought to myself that she would not handle it gracefully when everything was exposed. Later in the evening, she entered the family room where I was watching TV, her eyes slightly red, indicating that she might have been crying. The rest of the evening passed without any significant events. As I was getting ready for bed, I walked down the hallway to the spare bedroom and settled in. A few minutes later, she entered the room and stood there. I asked her, "What do you want?" She asked, "Aren't you coming to bed?" I replied, "No, you've made it clear that there will be no intimacy in the near future, so I might as well just sleep here alone." She left the room with tears in her eyes. Honestly, I didn't care. On Sunday morning, she woke me up at 8 o'clock, dressed for church, and invited me to join her. I declined, explaining that I had no plans to attend. The look on her face as she left the room indicated that she was beginning to understand the situation. She left the house later, and we didn't exchange many words throughout the day, each retreating to our respective rooms. On Monday morning, I left the house without encountering her or having a conversation. She called me, her voice filled with tears, expressing her apologies and love. I assured her that we would discuss everything when I returned and hung up the phone. I then contacted my boss, informing him that I would take the day off but confirmed my commitment to covering the Monday night football game. He was satisfied with my availability and asked how things were going. I replied that everything was as expected. My next destination was the LA in Roswell. Update: so here I am, walking into the motel lobby, trying to look like just another person on the job. I saw a young clerk named Kevin who seemed more interested in his phone than what was happening around him. I approached him with a clipboard in hand. "Hey, there's a service call for the hot tub suite," I said, tapping my makeshift fake work order about a complaint regarding the air conditioner making noise. "You know what it's like in this hot weather, right?" Kevin glanced at the clipboard, his brow slightly furrowing. I maintained a stern professional face, and he asked me, which room? He sounded a bit confused. I told him the room number, and for a moment, I thought he might call out my lie, but he just nodded, handed me the room key, and said, "Hurry up." I quickly entered the room, put down my toolbox, but instead of wrenches and measuring tools, it was filled with my high-tech equipment, microphones, cameras, everything I needed. I played the role of a maintenance worker, but what I was really doing was setting a trap to catch my wife in the act. The installation was easy. I hid them so well, you would never know they were there. I left the room as quickly as I had entered, nodded at Kevin, and told him the air conditioner wouldn't make noise anymore. He hardly looked up from his screen. As I left, I felt a bit like James Bond. To be honest, Kevin didn't know anything, and I was one step closer to finding out the truth about my wife. With plenty of time on my hands, I decided to take care of some other tasks. I went to our bank, withdrew half of the funds from our checking and savings accounts. After that, I cancelled our joint credit card. Then, I contacted my broker to arrange a meeting shortly after lunch to adjust our investment accounts. I also contacted my lawyer to discuss divorce and other legal matters, and we scheduled an appointment for later in the afternoon when he would be available. Next, I drove to Planters National Bank in Marietta, Georgia, opened a new account in my name, and deposited the cash check I had obtained. I had lunch in Marietta, although I didn't have much of an appetite. After lunch, I went to my broker's office to discuss changes to the investment portfolio. The changes he prepared would evenly distribute our investments without having to sell any assets to avoid unnecessary tax implications. I carried the documents with me. Afterward, I met with my lawyer to review the divorce papers he had drafted. I proposed a no-fault divorce with an equal division of assets if my wife would sign these papers immediately. If she refused, I asked him to include a divorce clause based on adultery. I was confident she would sign immediately, and everything was arranged. All I had to do was buy dinner and go to the television station to supervise the Monday Night Football broadcast. After leaving the lawyer's office, I turned on my phone and found several messages from Sharon. In her messages, she expressed concern and asked me to come home before the game, saying that my recent behavior had her very worried. She confessed her love for me and how painful it was for her to see me like this. Despite knowing her plans for the evening and my own knowledge of them, she could still send me these messages. This made me question my judgment and think that I must have been the biggest fool ever to love and trust this woman. I made a decision. The only possibility of saving my marriage depended on whether she would show up at the motel tonight. Her decision would be a good indicator of whether she cared enough to try to save our relationship and acknowledge its unstable state. At 8 p.m., I activated the fully automated broadcast system, and the Monday football game began. I configured the system to receive signals from the motel room at exactly 8:15 p.m. Bob entered the room and started making a phone call, telling her, "Hey baby, I'm in the room, come over as soon as you can." Sharon replied, "Okay, honey, I'll be there in a few minutes." After hanging up the phone, he muttered some words, which I overheard unintentionally, although I needed to listen again later to confirm the exact content. My marriage seemed to be falling apart, and although I didn't expect her to end it, the pain was still deep. This experience only strengthened my determination to make them face the consequences. I took out the list of people I was going to contact and started making phone calls, a task that took nearly half an hour. Sharon had already arrived at the motel, so I returned to the monitoring video and audio signals. She expressed, "Oh God, Bobby, the thought of you and me being intimate makes me so excited. I really cherish our nights together." She privately replied. Bobby invited her to come closer, saying, "Tonight my dear, I will fulfill your desires." She responded, "I love it when you talk to me with passion, Bobby." My heart sank, and a nauseating feeling washed over me. Here was a minister and a church secretary, along with my once sweet and loving wife, all caught up in a depraved dark abyss that I couldn't comprehend. In the next few minutes, I would witness just how twisted they had become. Both of them deserved to face the consequences that awaited them. Without a doubt. She posed on the bed, and I cannot describe further. The love of my life. He finished his act, and I understood that our shared future was irreparably broken. Despite being consumed by pain, my anger kept me focused. If they saw me at that moment, they might have quailed with fear and trepidation. At that moment, I had lost most of my humanity. My sole purpose was to bring them to justice. After enduring their behavior for 45 minutes, I had seen enough. It was halftime at the football game, time for the halftime show. I switched the system to live assist mode and began playing from Bob and Sharon's recordings. Within minutes, the phone started ringing non-stop. I chose to ignore all the calls and took out my mobile phone. I dialed Sharon's number, and the ringtone echoed through the monitor. She looked at the phone and commented, "It's Head, I won't answer his call this time, let's see how he likes it." I hung up and called again. I thought I should answer the phone, and she finally agreed, taking out her phone from her purse. Sharon responded to my greeting with a venomous tone, asking where I was and what I was doing. I asked her about her location and what was happening. She explained that since I hadn't called her earlier, she went shopping and planned to eat something before going home. I asked her sarcastically if she was shopping now. She confirmed and mentioned that she planned to spend a lot of money. Unable to restrain myself, I thanked her for being such a great wife, with a hint of sarcasm. She retorted, telling me not to speak to her like that and expressing confusion about my recent behavior. Before saying goodbye, she used that word again. "No, Sharon, the real problem is that Bast Bob is in the motel room, and their activities seem to be winding down," and she fired the final shot. I considered interrupting, knowing she wouldn't answer her phone again. I dialed the motel's number. "Kevin, this is Head, aren't you watching Monday Night Football?" "No, you should be, can you make a call to the hot tub suite for me?" After 2 rings, he picked up, and I said, "Hi Bob, can I speak to Sharon again?" She got on the line and asked why I was calling. "Well, Sharon, here's the situation. I know you've been unfaithful, and I'm well aware of your location and activities. I plan to file for divorce, and you'll find yourself with nowhere to live. Bob may also face some consequences." She asked in confusion, "What are you talking about? I don't understand your recent behavior. What happened?" I simply replied, "Sharon, this charade is over. I suggest you turn on Monday Night Football and enjoy the halftime show. See you later, goodbye." I watched in real time as she walked to the TV, tuned in to MNF. "Oh my God, no," she screamed, watching the live stream of her and Bob's activities. Due to the delay of the broadcast, she saw most of the content that the Atlanta area had already seen. Her response was limited to repeating, "Oh no," as she hurriedly got dressed and fled the room. Bob also left in a panic, cursing the whole time. "I'll kick that son of a bitch, I'll kick him," he muttered to himself, not realizing that his muttering might come back to haunt him. Once they left the room, I immediately turned off the monitor and allowed the video stream to continue for another minute before I turned off the live assist mode and restored the system to fully automated broadcast mode. I retrieved the videotapes, left the broadcast room, knowing this might be my last visit to this building. I took some personal items from the desk, and the last update. I spent the rest of the night at Frankie's. Yes, my halftime performance became the hot topic in the bar. After the game, I took a taxi and went home. When I arrived home, I found Sharon sitting alone in the dark living room, the phone disconnected, and it was clear she had been crying uncontrollably. Her tears did not move me. As far as I was concerned, it was all over. She cried and asked, "How could you do this to me? After so many years together, how could you do this?" I firmly replied, "No, Sharon, the real question is, how could you do this to me? I'm drunk and going to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." She remained motionless as I left the room and retreated to the spare bedroom. The next morning, I had a severe hangover, and she was still sitting on the couch with dark circles under her eyes. It seemed she hadn't slept at all night, but I didn't care. She had caused all this herself. I casually hung up the phone, and it immediately started ringing. For the next hour and a half, I took calls from family members, including her parents, friends, church acquaintances, my now former boss, and my 2 daughters. They were deeply disturbed by what they had seen, and my words could not comfort them. I understood that what they saw was harsh, but they were adults and would eventually get over it. I also received a call from Bob's wife, who asked if I had kept a recording of the entire incident. I assured her that I had a safely stored copy and would provide it to her when needed. Apparently, everyone I called had watched the halftime show of Monday Night Football, and they didn't hesitate to let me know. Some were angry because of the explicit content, while people like Sharon's parents thought my actions were terrible because I exposed her like this. However, most people were sympathetic and understood my position. It was a challenging ordeal, but I had to pay the price for my actions. Sharon sat crying throughout the ordeal. Eventually, I put the phone on hold again and went to make some coffee. When I came back, I offered her a cup and handed her the divorce papers and investment documents that needed to be signed. I said, "Sharon, after discovering your infidelity, I am filing for divorce and have witnessed what I did last night. It's clear that you have been cheating on me for at least a year or longer. I cannot continue this marriage. If you read these documents, you will see that I am requesting a no-fault divorce and proposing an equal division of our assets. To proceed with this, you must sign the divorce agreement and the agreement to divide our investments now. You will have time to consult a lawyer by 5 p.m. this afternoon and confirm that my proposal is fair. At 5:10, the deal will no longer be valid, and I will apply for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I will seek a property distribution based on our respective contributions and incomes. Essentially, I will pursue everything I can get. Let me make it clear, this is the best deal you are going to get, so please consider it carefully." I warned her that ultimately, a divorce based on adultery would be foolish because the entire Atlanta metropolitan area would know it was true. Everyone would know about your infidelity. As I overheard you telling Bob, your wish has come true, and now everyone knows. Take this deal, Sharon. She pleaded desperately, "Head, I love you, I want to save our marriage. Can't we try to work this out?" I firmly replied, "It might be true, Sharon, but it doesn't matter. Love is irrelevant. I will not marry you. Our marriage ended the moment you chose him over me. Believe it or not, that decision was made when you had an affair with him. Now, I suggest you clean up and consult a lawyer. Time ice running out." That afternoon, she came home with the documents. My lawyer advised me to sign these documents. He believed that given the circumstances, you have made a fair offer, and he thinks I should accept this settlement. She said, "Head, can we talk? Can you listen to me? Maybe consider forgiving and working together to save our marriage?" I agreed to sit down and listen because I really wanted to understand why she did what she did. I also wanted to know if this was the first time in our marriage. We sat at the kitchen table, and she began to explain everything. She revealed that there was nothing before this. It started shortly before she started working for Bob. She admitted that she didn't really understand why it happened because she was very happy with me. But she couldn't deny that something attracted her to Bob. She mentioned his charm and the feeling that he loved her. This is Sharon, she's a bit like someone who messes up in marriage and then says sorry. She said a lot of sorry, trying to make up for her mistakes with tears and a sad face. As if she thought feeling sad would be enough to fix everything, even though she didn't take her commitment seriously. It's like when your dog bites your homework and then acts cute, thinking you won't be angry. Unfortunately, Sharon, life is not a game, and you can't just say sorry and make it all better. It seems that just feeling sorry is not enough. Now, I admit Bob's charm, but after playing 2 audio clips I saved, her illusions were shattered. The first was Bob's mutter on the first day, "That idiot had better make sure her husband doesn't find out about our affair." The second audio clip was from the room before she arrived, "I'm going to take advantage of her tonight, and tomorrow I will threaten her if she causes any trouble. If her husband finds out about our affair and exposes everything, I will risk it." So, Sharon, not only did you break our marriage, but your feelings for Bob were also wrong. I pointed out that no, Sharon, I cannot continue our marriage for 2 reasons. First, you broke our marriage vows, and I cannot stand it. Second, you will never find happiness with me again. I can no longer satisfy you. No, Sharon, no matter how much love there may be between us, it is not enough to overcome the damage you have caused to our marriage. She just sat there crying, knowing that what I wanted to say was the truth. In the end, she signed 2 sets of documents. I informed her that I decided to move out and give her the time she needed to find a new place to live. I don't believe she can afford the house, and frankly, I don't want to stay there like that. Our agreement stipulates that the house will be sold, and the profits will be divided equally, just like all our other assets. Except for the house contains too many memories I want to leave behind. I packed up the documents and the bag I had prepared the day before and left the house. I went to my broker's office to drop off the documents and then spent the night in a hotel. The next morning, I had an appointment to discuss the divorce documents with my lawyer, who agreed to submit them to our county superior court that day. During our meeting, we also discussed my predicament with the radio station and the FCC. My lawyer explained that the FCC has the authority to issue civil fines, revoke broadcast licenses, or deny renewal applications. In addition, those found guilty in federal court of violating these regulations may face criminal fines and up to 2 years in prison. Considering the circumstances, my lawyer thought that prison time was unlikely, but a hefty fine was inevitable at the end of my broadcasting career. I would have to look for a new job in a few days. The consequences of my actions became painfully clear soon after. I received a legal notice from the FCC and had to prepare to defend myself in court in a few days. I won't bother you with the complex details of the case, but it can be said that the fine imposed on me was equivalent to nearly a year of my annual salary, depleting my savings account. What's worse, my broadcast license was revoked, and I would be banned from working in my field for the next 2 years. However, there was a silver lining in this dark cloud. TT also watched Monday Night Football, and although my actions were illegal and vindictive, he showed me compassion. He offered me a job with responsibilities that fit within the FCC restrictions. It seems that he had recently gone through his own troubles with his divorce, especially with Henry's daughter and Peter's sister, which may have softened his attitude towards me. I think I do have one thing to thank HJ for. In the end, Bob ran into me at Frankie's once, and he seemed ready to throw a punch. But somehow, I managed to grab one of his arms tightly. "Listen to me, Bob, I don't want to hear from you anymore, is that clear?" I said firmly. He grunted, "Okay." I think to give him a final kick, "Bob, I have a recording of you threatening me in my hand. If I give that to the police, I believe I have every right to get a restraining order against you, and I might even be able to press charges for assault with the existing evidence. You could end up serving time in prison. Is that what you want?" He shook his head, disagreeing, and when I emphasized again, I added, "Well, I think this will be our last interaction." He is no longer a pastor, he lost his church job, the denomination revoked his license, and stripped him of his ordination. The last I heard, he was working at a city travel agency. His wife divorced him on the grounds of adultery and received a substantial settlement. I am moving forward with my life. It's not perfect, but I am looking for happiness. Over the past few months, I have dated several women, but I have not entered into a serious relationship yet. When the right woman comes along, I will marry her. I know it's just a matter of time, and I am willing to invest the time to find the right person for me. I occasionally run into Sharon, and we both attended Stephanie's college graduation and Melanie's first child's baptism. I was polite, but I made it clear that I was not interested in establishing a friendship or any form of relationship with her. For me, it was obvious that she was unhappy. I could see that she suffered emotionally from our breakup and regretted her actions. But the problem is not her regret, but her betrayal of me and our marriage. If I were a different person, maybe I could forgive her, but my values are quite inflexible, with little room for compromise. She will have to live with the knowledge that she sacrificed me and our life for her affair with Bob. I was just an ordinary person who loved her deeply, but she chose to throw it all away. Yes, she let me go, and regrettably, she also lost any decent appearance. As anyone who witnessed her notorious performance during the halftime show of Monday Night Football knows, she is an unfaithful wife. There are rumors that she received many dating invitations, but to her credit, she turned them all down. It's not a very fulfilling way of life, but I didn't do it, she did it herself.